Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I want to talk about one of the new unique items that has been already teased for the Blight League. This item is the Cold Iron Point. I want to discuss the mechanics of it, unpack them a little bit, and do a little bit of brainstorming as to ways you'll potentially build around this unique item. Now, fair warning, this item doesn't exist in game yet and has just been teased. It might be very rare, it might be very expensive, we don't yet know. And because I'm recording this well prior to the launch of the Blight League, everything that's in discussion here is subject to change prior to release. So disclaimers out of the way, I'm not yet getting into builds because theory crafting doesn't really make sense until all of the class balance changes have been announced. It's entirely possible that some of the ascendancies might change in ways that render a build that looks perfect now into an unplayable mess, or alternately they may change in other ways that make something that would be an unplayable mess right now into a potentially very good build. So not going to go into fully mapping out a build, just talking about something that can be a bit of a skeleton from which you can design your own build later. So let's talk about this item. At first it doesn't look like much. It's just an Azimite dagger. It's a rune dagger, so it has caster mods but no real melee mods. 30% increased global critical strike chance. Yeah, that's nice. You can get better implicits on weapons than that. Base damage is terrible. Then it's got two very interesting mods on it. The first one is a drawback. Deal no elemental damage. Where have we seen this before? We've seen it before on Starforge. This applies to you, and it is a global modifier. So it doesn't just mean that your attacks with Cold Iron Point deal no elemental damage. It applies to all of your skills. So this is a huge drawback, and it kills many scaling methods for scaling physical damage from spells. You can't use elemental conversion, you can't use percentage of physical damage added as extra cold or extra fire or extra of a random element. It doesn't impact poison, however, so keep that in mind. We'll keep poison as a potential use case for this weapon. Secondly, it has +3 to the level of all physical spell skill gems. You'll notice a word that's missing from this, and that word is left out very deliberately. It does not have the word socketed in it. This does not just apply to the 3 sockets that you see on this item. This applies to physical spell skill gems that you have that are equipped into any of your equipment. So it counts your chest, counts your helmet, counts your gloves, your boots, and so on. And this is a completely unique effect in Path of Exile. So far, everything that has increased the level of skill gems has been limited to the item itself, so just gems that are socketed in the item itself. Now, this can be dual wielded, and it probably should be. So this means that between 2 copies of the Cold Iron Point, you're looking at getting +6 to the level of socketed physical spell skill gems that are socketed in your other items. Now, also, it is a dagger. This means that equipping it precludes using weapons such as wands or bows, so there are going to be no cast on critical strike range shenanigans. In any case, we're talking about physical spell skill gems. I've compiled an exhaustive list of them, and some of them are worth further mention, some of them aren't. So just without any further ado, I'm just going to read out the whole list. Bear Trap, Blade Vortex, Blade Fall, Blood Rage, Determination, Divine Ire, Dread Banner, Ethereal Knives, Explosive Trap, Glacial Cascade, Herald of Agony, Herald of Purity, Holy Flame Totem, Molten Shell, Phase Run, Pride, Punishment, Purifying Flame, Seismic Trap, Shockwave Totem, Summon Stone Golem, Unearth, Vulnerability, War Banner, and Wave of Conviction. Now, a number of these are actually elemental skills in disguise. So for instance, Divine Ire is a spell that deals primarily lightning and physical damage that then converts a proportion of it to lightning and a proportion of it to fire. Basically renders the skill completely useless for the purposes of using this weapon. Who cares if you're getting 6 extra levels to Divine Ire if all of your elemental damage is getting shut down? So for that reason, any of those conversion skills, I'm not looking further into them. Doesn't mean there can't be some trick meme build involving them. I'm sure someone's going to figure out a way to use this weapon with Divine Ire and Poison, and just accept that you're losing a portion of your damage to the conversion, but then try and convert as much of that damage as you can to chaos and see what you can do with it. I'm sure someone's going to try that, but that's not on my list of potential uses for it. So once we remove the conversion skills, the skill gems that have the best scaling with level, because you'll notice that this is +3 to the level of a gem, doesn't mean the same thing to all gems. For instance, a skill gem like Determination does not gain very much from each skill gem level, or Vitality, or various other things that just get +1% to some statistic. On the other hand, skill gems that deal an amount of damage that is that scales with level, such as Fireball, they scale a lot with additional levels. So the ones that scale the most with levels are Blade Vortex, Ethereal Knives, Herald of Agony, Herald of Purity, and Pride. Now the last two scale a little bit less than the first three, so that's Herald of Purity and Pride, but I still mention them because they do scale a fair bit with level, and in addition they synergize well with the first three. Now Herald of Purity seems as a pretty marginal amount that it scales with levels. So if we bring up a table here, this is on the Path of Exile wiki, you'll notice that increased physical spell damage, added physical spell damage, does scale with level, but it's not particularly much. It's sort of going up a few percent, and the more minion physical damage, it's going up a few percent each time, but it's not rocketing up super fast. So for that reason, Herald of Purity, I'm just going to mark as something. We're not going to try and build around it. It's just something that we might use because it gains a lot from all of the other things that we're doing here. On the other ones though, I see three main ways that you would use this weapon. First up is in conjunction with Blade Vortex and Vile Blade Vortex, using Pride, Herald of Purity, and Brutality support to really amp up the amount of physical damage that your Blade Vortex does. Now just note that Brutality support shuts off any prospect of using poison. When you're using Brutality support attached to a gem, that skill gem, any poison that it inflicts has its duration set to 0, and it will deal no chaos damage at all. Now this should be an absolute wrecking ball up close. Blade Vortex is a hard-hitting skill as it is, and scaling up the physical damage this much should mean that enemies just absolutely melt when they get close to you. That said, I'm not impressed by its ability to hit monsters at range because, quite simply, it has none. I think this will be of limited use, and its true power will come about in maps such as Malformation that are really tight, or Carcass, or Toxic Sewer, and the like. If there's a map like that you really like running, then maybe consider running a double Cold Iron Point pure physical Blade Vortex character that uses Brutality support and Pride and Herald of Purity as your mana reservations. I think there is a build in there, but I'm not going to focus on it. It's just an idea that I want to flag. The second option is any physical spell. So this can be Blade Vortex, this can be Ethereal Knives, it can be Blade Fall, which is not currently a very good spell, but who knows? Maybe it will be. Any of those physical spells that deal damage directly with poison support. So you're going to be finding ways to make your physical spells poison, and then scaling the poison damage that they do. This is something that we'll have to watch the assassinry work closely to see how viable this will be. If physical spells still can inflict poison as they can now, then in that situation, I think there is a real potential for this to work, but it will live or die, sink or swim with the assassinry work. So keep an eye on that, and we'll see how it goes. The third option is the one I'm most excited about, however, and that is using Herald of Agony as your key payload. So it's the thing that does damage, and then uses a fast-hitting spell skill with added physical or added chaos damage as the trigger. So Herald of Agony is an unusual skill. I made an entire video about it during the Synthesis League, which I will link in the comments below. But basically the way that it works is that it is a Herald skill, so it's a reservation, and it's one that you typically will put you'll link several supports to. It's unusual in that it is a Herald that summons minions and that focuses on minions. It gives you a 20% chance to poison on hit, and this only applies to your skills that are capable of poisoning. So that means skills that deal physical damage and or chaos damage. It grants you 10% more poison damage. This is to you. Then the Agony Crawler deals a percentage of increased physical damage per virulence you have, increased attack speed per virulence you have, and added physical damage per virulence you have. And then when you have any virulence, and virulence is a fast decaying buff that you get 1 stack of each time you poison an enemy. While you have at least 1 stack of virulence, you will have an Agony Crawler, which is a big scorpion that follows you around and lays waste to your enemies. The thing that is special about Herald of Agony is that it has quite an unusual scaling mechanism, in that it has the minion that it summons gets increased physical damage percentage per virulence, gets increased attack speed per virulence, and gets flat physical per virulence. This is 3 ways that it scales with your virulence. And essentially it means that your damage output from your Agony Crawler effectively is a cubic function in the amount of virulence that you've got. So if you double the amount of virulence that you've got, you are roughly, and this is an approximation, but you're roughly multiplying by 8 your overall damage output. Now this means in practice that you don't do very much damage when you've got low virulence, but when you've got very high virulence, and it is pretty easy to sustain high virulence on this build, you will be able to absolutely shred enemies when your Agony Crawler is actively attacking them. Now, the thing that makes this so important is that with all of these various axes on which you can scale your gem damage for the Agony Crawler, all of these scale quite considerably with the gem level. So you'll notice here that there is the first column, which is increased physical damage percentage per virulence you have. This starts out at 6% when your gem is at level 1, goes up to 7 quickly, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then eventually it can rocket up. If you can get your Agony Crawler all the way up to level 34, which you'll be able to do now, you'll be able to get 17% added physical damage per virulence. More realistically though, the target we're going to be aiming for is gem level 31, effective gem level 31, which will give you 16% in this column. This means that if you've got 30 virulence, this is 480% increased minion damage. Next up, we have attack speed on Agony Crawler per virulence. And here you can get as much as 5%. So if you've got 30 virulence, then you're looking at 150% increased attack speed for your minion. And then physical damage, flat physical per virulence. If you can get 30 virulence, then you're looking at 4,000 to 8,000 flat or added flat physical damage while you have 30 virulence. So this is an enormous amount of damage that your Agony Crawler is dealing, and predictably this is going to melt enemies. Additionally, 40% of the damage from the Agony Crawler is converted to chaos, which adds even more damage, and results in the Agony Crawler just melting the enemy that it is targeted on. So with all of that in mind, the Herald of Agony, I think hopefully convinced you there that it scales very, very well from the +3 to the level of all physical spell gems. So let's talk about how you would get to gem level 31. You start with a level 21 base Herald of Agony. Now you can get that by corrupting a level 20 gem or by picking it up through trade from other players. You'll use 2 of these cold iron points, and that will give you 6 more levels. So we're at 27. Next, you're going to socket it into a helmet that has the Necromancer's prefix, which gives +3 to the level of socketed minion gems. At this point, we're looking at gem level 30. Lastly, we're going to attach it to a level 4 Empower, which adds 3 more skill gem levels up to a level 33. We're now talking about having a level 33 Herald of Agony in gem sitting in our helmet. It doesn't necessarily need to be a helmet. It could be level 30. It would be level 30 if it was in any other slot, in which case you would need to find another way to get it higher. The key thing is, though, that in previous leagues you required now legacy synthesis items in order to hit that level 31 breakpoint, but hopefully I've convinced you there that it's now pretty easy by using dual Cold Iron points, it's now pretty easy to get beyond level 31 if you want to. There's also the option of using faceted fossils for an expensive way to go even further, and this can get you to level 35 quite plausibly, which is, yeah, you know, even more damage. 34 is the next breakpoint after 31, and so hitting 34 is a big jump in your power. Hitting 35 is only a small little bonus, but every little bit helps, hey. Just note that you don't need everything that I've discussed in order to hit level 31. What you need is 2 copies of the Cold Iron point, a level 20 gem, you don't need 21 yet, and a +2 or +3 minion helm. So let's say that you've only got a +2, so that's now taking us to level 28, and then a level 4 in power. Or alternately, if you had a level 3 in power and a +3 minion gem, or a level 21 Herald of Agony base gem, in that case there's a lot of combinations that will add up to Magic 31. Now, in order to inflict poison with Stormbrand or some other spell, you'll notice I'm mentioning Stormbrand. That's because it's probably the best way to do this. What you will need to do is modify your Stormbrand in some way so that it deals physical damage or chaos damage or both. There's a number of ways you can do this. You can use an Eldritch helmet, so a helmet of the Elder, that has the mods that add flat physical or flat chaos damage to all of your spells. Or you could use a Jagged Fossil crafted set of gloves, or an Aberrant Fossil crafted set of gloves, which will give you physical damage to all of your attacks and spells for the Jagged Fossil, or chaos damage for the Aberrant Fossil. You can also use a well-crafted Hypnotic Eye Jewel, and it's worth pointing out, I mentioned Stormbrand as what I feel is probably going to be the best option, but who knows what balance changes there'll be. If it turns out that you don't want to use Stormbrand for whatever reason, Firestorm hits a lot too, and you could even do something like using Cyclone attached to Cast While Channeling, attached to Firestorm, attached to Poison. So you can then spin towards the enemy, sticking out your 2 Cold Iron points. They're going to do next to no damage, but you don't really care about that. But while you're moving, every 280 milliseconds, you will be setting off your Cast While Channeling, assuming it's level 20, which I think is 280 milliseconds. I'll have to check that. But in any case, it's multiple times a second. You'll be casting Firestorm. Your Firestorm's damage will be anemic, but it will inflict poisons because it's dealing physical damage. You've added physical or chaos damage from some other source, and then you've attached it to poison support. You can also use lesser poison support, which will also provide the initial chaos that you need to get started. In any case, that is a way that I think that you can use Cold Iron Point to seriously support a Herald of Agony build. So just to quickly sum up, this is a powerful new item. +3 to the level of all physical spell skill gems is universal. It is not just restricted to the gems that are socketed in this item, and that is why this is a unique and potentially powerful item. And I feel it will go well with any of Blade Vortex, with a pure physical Blade Vortex setup or Val Blade Vortex. It will go potentially well with any physical spell that is poisoning enemies, and it will go potentially very well with Herald of Agony.